Hi, good morning to all of you. I'm Rashid and I'll be starting with an important section of General Studies Paper 1, that is World History. Clear? So, from today onwards, we'll start with a section of World History which is mentioned in General Studies Paper 1 that you must be knowing, as there are four papers of General Studies in Paper 1. We have a last section of History, Culture that even includes World History, which is not largely asked in your mains examination. So today will be starting with World History section, very important for your mains examination. At least 1 to 2 questions are asked normally every year from World History section. Now, first of all, before we start, the first thing to be done is first thing to be pursued is to understand the syllabus prescribed for the World History topic. Clear? So, what exactly is the syllabus given by UPSC to be covered thoroughly, and then we can start exactly with our course. Clear? So, first of all, let us understand about the syllabus, and you must do this exercise with every module. So, first major thing to be done by every aspirant is to go through the syllabus thoroughly, to look into the topics, subtopics, and even the minute details, so that everything needs to be covered properly, so that you are able to write the questions to the answers being asked from the syllabus prescribed. Clear? So, first of all, let us understand about the syllabus related to world history. First of all, I'll repeat, I'll just explain. Clear? The topic related to world history mentioned in GS paper 1 says, clear, the major events of world history from 18th century, like industrial revolution. Clear? So the topic starts with industrial revolution. Why this topic is the first topic prescribed in UPSC syllabus, will come to the logic and philosophy behind it. Clear? So topic says that major events from the 18th century, like industrial revolution, world wars, redrawal of national boundaries, colonization, decolonization, and political philosophy like capitalism, socialism, communism, their forms and effect on society. This is the syllabus explicitly mentioned by UPSC in GS paper 1. I'll repeat. Clear? Major events of the 18th century, like the industrial revolution, the world wars, clear, redrawal of national boundaries, colonization and decolonization, and political philosophy like capitalism, socialism, communism, their forms and effect. Clear? So first thing to be done by all of you is you need to have this topics written in the notebook first of all. Then only we can go on unfolding the topics and subtopics to understand the beauty and the context of the world history syllabus. Clear? So first thing to be done is to understand the syllabus. So I'll write the syllabus on board also, the major points. You should have those points in your notebook. Clear? So related to world history. So today we'll start with world history. Clear? This the first of all the syllabus prescribed. Syllabus says major events from the 18th century, like number one, industrial revolution. Second is the world wars, that is first and the second world war. Third is redrawal of national boundaries. Then we have colonization and decolonization. And the fifth one is political philosophy like socialism, communism, and capitalism. Their forms and effect on society. This is the syllabus prescribed for world history. So first thing that we done is to understand the topics mentioned in the syllabus that needs to be covered thoroughly in our classes. Clear? So major events from the 18th century like the Industrial Revolution, then the World Wars, redrawal of national boundaries, colonization and decolonization, and political philosophy like socialism, communism, capitalism, their forms and effect on society. So all these topics needs to be covered. Is that clear? Write down first of all the syllabus. Keep on responding, keep on writing the messages also, so that I could get to know it is online class. So all of you have written the syllabus, the topics and subtopics. Okay, fine, clear. Now let us start first again. Clear? See, apart from all these topics which are explicitly mentioned in our syllabus that anyway has to be covered, clear, another important thing related to world history is that there are other important topics which are not explicitly mentioned here but that needs to be covered to give a sense of completion related to world history. For instance, I'll let you know. Clear? Here only one revolution, that is Industrial Revolution, is mentioned, but world history comprises of 5 major revolutions including Industrial Revolution that needs to be covered, like Industrial Revolution followed by American Revolution, French Revolution, then we have Russian Revolution and Communist Revolution or Chinese Revolution. Clear? So 5 revolutions are to be done in world history without which the topic cannot be justified. Clear? Apart from this, we also need to cover some other topics like Italian unification, German unification, and then we have to discuss about major personalities of world history like Napoleon, then we have to discuss about Metternich, then Otto von Bismarck, then Count Cavour, and important other personalities as well. So obviously all these topics also needs to be covered in order to give a sense of comprehensive understanding about world history. So anyway, these topics has to be done, that is mandatory, but apart from this, certain implied topics of world history will also be covered in the coming sessions. Clear? So after understanding the requirement related to syllabus, now we'll move on to discuss about the world history. We'll start from 18th century. First of all, why the syllabus starts from 18th century? Because you must understand, clear, that even European history witnessed 3 major phases of ancient, medieval and modern. Clear? In fact, modernization in Europe began to take a concrete shape by 18th century. Modernization started way back from 13th century when Renaissance started to take place in Europe, but it took a concrete shape from 18th century, and the first major manifestation of modernization was a major revolution that acted as template for all these developments in course of time, and therefore the syllabus starts from 18th century that marked the concrete beginning of modernization, and with Industrial Revolution because it acted as template for all subsequent developments of world history till the last. Clear? So obviously it's very logical. The philosophy behind it is to give you a sense that how things began to take place from 18th century. What was the first development like Industrial Revolution that acted as template for all major developments in course of time that decided the fate of humanity all across the world. Clear? So first of all, therefore it starts from 18th century, but we will just revert back a bit, just some centuries back in order to have the understand the background behind the beginning of modernization in Europe. Clear? It's clear. So first of all, understand the background of modernization. So background for modern beginning in world history, will understand this. Clear? Just understand. Modernization in Europe started from 13th century. What do we mean by modernization? We basically mean that existing traditional and medieval system began to be questioned, began to be criticized, and therefore interest in scientific learning, interest in modern thinking started to be emphasized. Clear? And when it began to be emphasized, it started with a cultural movement in Europe known as Renaissance in Europe around 13th century. Clear? So first major cultural movement that took place in Europe was Renaissance, which inspired scientific thinking, which inspired modern thinking, logical and rational thinking, that began to question the medieval system and institution. And with Renaissance, gradual modernization began to take place, and that concrete modernization started from 18th century. Now, which were those medieval institutions or traditional institutions that began to be challenged in Europe from 13th century with the beginning of Renaissance that resulted into modernization gradually? Clear? First of all across Europe, there were three major medieval institutions that existed. Clear? What were these institutions? Number one, politically speaking, all major countries of Europe were dominated by autocratic monarchy. Autocratic monarchy means monarch had absolute power to dictate his terms and policies. Clear? So all major countries of Europe were dominated by autocratic monarchy. All those monarchs were basically not elected by people but became rulers by belonging to royal family. Like in France it was Bourbon family, like in Russia it was Romanov family, and so on. Clear? And none of these monarchs cared for the people, rather they always looked for their own royal privileges, and therefore people had strong discontent against autocratic monarchy. So politically speaking, the medieval Europe was marked by autocratic monarchy. Please don't write, just understand, I'll dictate everything. Clear? So politically, all major countries of Europe were marked by autocratic monarchy. Second, economically, all major countries of Europe were dominated by feudal structure and system. Feudal structure system means that monarch used to give certain amount of rights, or rather major rights on land, to the landed intermediaries known as feudal lords. Clear? Feudal lords became the owners of land, and feudal lords got these lands cultivated with the help of peasantry class. Clear? With the help of peasants, when lands were cultivated, major share of agriculture produce were appropriated by feudal lords, and with surplus revenue, feudal lords began to invest this amount in construction of large forts or castles. Clear? Even now in Europe you will find castles all across different countries. Clear? These castles were constructed in medieval times by the feudal lords. Clear? So feudal lords emerged to be very powerful section in society and economy, and they were given all privileges and exemptions from taxes also by the monarch. So second major economic system was dominated by feudalism, and feudalism means it was largely dependent on agriculture. So no prominent trade and commerce were promoted at this time. Economy was largely closed and dependent on agriculture. So politically, autocratic monarchy; economically, redundant feudal system; religiously, all major countries of Europe were dominated by church and the clergy class. Clear? Church became very powerful, and the clergy class became so divine that they dictated terms on the people. Clear? And therefore church and clergy class, they became the dominant institution, and they were also given all privileges and exemptions from taxation, and it was given a sense to the people that church and clergy class is infallible, they cannot commit any wrong. Clear? So obviously people had to blindly follow the church and the clergy class, and the church and the clergy class gave total support to medieval system like autocratic monarchy and feudal system. All these largely affected the scientific inquiry among the people, rational thinking among the people, and they had to blindly follow the system that existed. But in course of time, when Renaissance started from 13th century, scientific thinking and inquiry began to take place. People began to question all these medieval institutions like autocratic aristocratic monarchy, feudal system, and the privileges enjoyed by the church and the clergy class. Just because of all these developments only, modernization began to take place, and this modernization that began to take place in Europe was first promoted effectively in one country, that is England. Clear? England was the first country that began to challenge the medieval institutions, and England began to witness for several political reforms in course of time. All these political reforms created a very democratic atmosphere, and such democratic atmosphere began to give way to industrial development in Europe. What were the major factors that basically became the reasons for industrialization? First of all, in England, we'll come to these factors. First of all, we'll understand about these medieval institutions that began to be criticized from 13th century that ultimately gave way to modernization Europe by 18th century, from where our syllabus starts. The background is clear. First of all, right heading as the background. Background. Right, introduction first. Clear? Right. Right. European continent was marked by medieval system and institutions, till the 18th century, clear? Right, such a system began to be questioned. From 13th century, when a cultural movement or Renaissance, began in Europe. Renaissance. We pronounce it as Renaissance. Renaissance began in Europe. Clear? Like this movement promoted scientific inquiry, and rational thinking, that criticized the traditional system in Europe. Clear? In Europe. Change paragraph. Right. In medieval Europe, political system was marked by autocratic monarchy. Political system was marked by autocratic monarchy, whereby all powers were concentrated. All powers were concentrated in the hands of monarch. In the hands of monarch. Clear? Monarch. Right. Such traditional rulers. Next sentence. Such traditional rulers. Such traditional rulers. Such traditional rulers were not elected by the people. Were not elected by the people. But ruled by virtue of belonging to the ruling families or the royal families. Virtue of belonging to the ruling families or the royal families. Clear? Royal families. Ruling families or the royal families. Right, next sentence. Right, consequently, these rulers never cared for masses, that created huge discontent, leading to radical changes, revolutionary changes, from 18th century. Radical changes from 18th century. So, the one institution that is autocratic monarchy. 18th century. We'll come to several royal families. 18th century. Change paragraph. Clear? Right. Economically, European countries were dominated by feudalism, whereby the landed intermediaries, or the feudal lords, enjoyed huge power and influence, and collected large share of agricultural produce. Clear? Right. The feudal lords were given all privileges. And exemptions. From taxes. And they accumulated huge wealth, and they accumulated huge wealth. Clear? Right. The feudal lords constructed large and magnificent. The feudal lords constructed large and magnificent castles, forts, large and magnificent castles, which became symbols of medieval Europe, which became symbols of medieval Europe, symbols of medieval Europe. So politically, autocratic system; economically, feudalism. Clear? Change paragraph. Clear? Right. Religiously, religiously, right, next paragraph. Religiously, whole European continent was dominated by the institution of church, dominated by the institution of church, dominated by the institution of church and the clergy class, church and the clergy class, and the clergy class. Clear? Right. Like feudal lords, the clergy class, like feudal lords, the clergy class were also given all privileges, and exemptions from taxes. Exemptions from taxes. Exemption from taxes. Clear? Taxes. Right. Moreover, church was considered to be infallible, that cannot come to an end, that cannot commit any mistake. Considered to be infallible, was considered to be infallible, whereby masses could not question the religious institution. So three major institutions that existed from medieval Europe. Change paragraph. Clear? Right. From 13th century, people started to question the relevancy of these institutions as they wanted to get rid of traditional system, Clear? Right. The first European country that started modernization that started modernization against the existing medieval system. Against the existing medieval system was England. Against the existing medieval system was England. Initially known as England, later known as Great Britain and then United Kingdom, was England. Clear? Right. The common masses in England, began to demand political freedom, and civil liberty. From the English monarch, in the beginning of the 13th century. In the beginning of the 13th century. Clear? Right. Under such pressure, English monarch, King John, issued Magna Carta, very important document, issued Magna Carta in 1215. Which guaranteed political freedom, and civil liberty, to the common people. See, from here, do understand all these factors you have to write when question arises. Why Industrial Revolution first of all took place in England? It started with political reforms. First country in Europe. Clear? 1215. Right. After some centuries, a bloodless revolution took place in England. A bloodless revolution took place in England. Known as the Glorious Revolution. In 1688, Glorious Revolution in 1688, which replaced the autocratic monarchy, with the constitutional monarchy, as English Parliament began to function. Parliament began to function. So, first country, now just pause here, just understand from here, clear? So the first country to start to raise voice against medieval system, especially autocratic monarchy, was England, and therefore under the pressure of common people, King John issued the document known as Magna Carta that guaranteed civil liberty and political freedom to the people in the beginning of the 13th century. Not only this, in course of time, a bloodless revolution took place that transformed English political system from autocratic monarchy to constitutional monarchy, as parliament comprising of elected representatives began to function. So all these major political changes first of all took place in England, and therefore England took the lead in modernization as compared to other countries of Europe. Clear? What were other developments? We'll just understand. Clear? When all these developments began to take place in England, clear? At the same time, apart from questioning the autocratic system or political system, some group of traders and merchants emerged in England who began to question the redundant economic system marked by feudalism. Clear? Because all these traders and merchants realized that huge amount of wealth in the hands of feudal lords are not being properly utilized. Rather, all these wealth is being used to construct castles, which were basically extravagant expenditure. So traders and merchants of England realized that they need to go for optimum utilization of wealth to accelerate the process of economic growth. This philosophy whereby emphasis is given to use the wealth in most optimum fashion to accelerate the rate of economic growth, this philosophy gave birth to a new concept in world history known as the philosophy of capitalism. Clear? So in economic sphere, ideology emerged in England known as ideology of capitalism. Now, what is this ideology? We'll understand here only. Clear? According to the ideology of capitalism, the resources and wealth of a nation are not to be forcefully distributed equitably among all sections, unlike socialism. Clear? Rather, resources of a nation is to be utilized by that class of people which has the wisdom, which has the knowledge to ensure its optimum utilization to accelerate the process of economic growth. And it is believed once the process of economic growth is accelerated, the benefit of this growth will percolate to all the sections, and in course of time, equality will be established automatically. So unlike socialism, equality is not to be injected by the state or government. In capitalism, equality has to be established automatically according to economic functioning. So under capitalism, resources are to remain confined among that section which has the wisdom or knowledge to ensure its optimum utilization for accelerated economic growth. This is the philosophy known as philosophy of capitalism. Such philosophy was much more explained and justified by a great English thinker and philosopher, Adam Smith, who in the 18th century wrote a monumental work titled as The Wealth of Nations. And in this work, Wealth of Nations, Adam Smith gave the philosophy of laissez-faire. Laissez-faire means free market, let us alone, clear? Whereby market was to function according to the principle of demand and supply with no intervention by state or government. Clear? So the laissez-faire economic system advocated free market economy with no intervention by state or government. This led to further support for merchants and traders to promote trading activities, and that to diversify from agricultural activities. Clear? Since trade and commerce began to be promoted, in this context only we need to understand large number of British traders and merchants went to different continents of Asia and Africa, and they started the process of establishing imperial and colonial control over these countries. So obviously capitalism had one important fallout, one important great consequence, that is it promoted the concept of British imperialism and colonialism largely in Asia and Africa, from where resources began to be brought to the home country, that is England, and England started to develop very fast. Clear? At the same time, England had large amount of its own natural reserves, especially of coal and iron. Clear? And the capitalist class that emerged, they wanted to promote large and heavy industries in Britain. How these industries began to be promoted, we'll discuss into sequel of events that led to rapid industrialization in England. Clear? So first of all, we'll need to understand about ideology of capitalism that challenged the existing economic system in England. Clear? Change paragraph. Clear? Right. Right. In England, several traders and merchants began to emerge. Several traders and merchants began to emerge. Who started to criticize the dominance of feudal lords and even the clergy class Clear? Right. English traders realized that feudal lords are not utilizing the wealth properly, and they advocated that resources should be utilized in optimum fashion, to accelerate the process of economic growth. Accelerate the process of economic growth. Clear? Right. Such advocacy promoted the ideology of capitalism. Right, the definition, very important. Ideology of capitalism. Ideology of capitalism. So we'll come to ideology of capitalism. Now there's a question from Anand. Clear? Dear sir, if possible, kindly elaborate a little on feudalism and feudal lords. I couldn't get completely. I'll let you know. Clear? Just understand about this concept. What is feudalism? Clear? What is the concept of feudalism that existed in India also, but Indian feudalism and European feudalism are different in concepts. Clear? So first of all, I'll let you know about feudalism. What is this concept of feudalism? Clear? To understand the concept of feudalism, clear? Just understand one thing. Almost all major countries of Europe had a kind of pyramidal structure. Clear? On top of it was obviously the monarch. Clear? Monarch. Second section comprised of the clergy class. Third section comprised of the nobility class, that is the feudal lords, and the large middle section comprised of the common people. that included the peasantry class as well. Clear? Now what happened was the clergy class normally used to look after religious activities, so we cannot consider them as under economic section. But nobility class, clear, monarch, all agricultural land which was there under the monarch, autocratic monarch, those agricultural lands were given to the feudal lords. What was the function of feudal lords? Feudal lords were supposed to get the lands cultivated with the help of common people, that is the peasantry class. Out of the total agriculture produce generated, maximum share was to be taken by the feudal lords. So peasantry class, the common masses, always remained hand to mouth. Clear? And major share was taken by feudal lords. Certain amount of tributes from this feudal lord was given to the monarch as well. So there was a tacit understanding between monarch and feudal lords. And feudal lords, why they are known as lords? Because they became the owners of agricultural lands. Clear? So obviously they were the owners of agricultural lands and they collected regular amount of produce from the peasantry class, and they acted as intermediaries between monarch on the one hand, common people on the other hand. Clear? But when you compare it with Indian feudalism that started from late ancient times, that is especially from Gupta period, there's a difference. Clear? In European feudalism, the feudalism system was based on class consciousness, that is the nobility class and the peasantry class. In Indian context, feudalism was not based on class consciousness, it was based on caste consciousness. That is, feudalism started when land grants were given to Brahmins. Clear? So obviously it was based on caste consciousness, and people of lower caste acted as peasantry class and they gave the lands produced to the Brahmins. So feudalism in India was based on caste consciousness, feudalism in Europe was based on class consciousness. Moreover, another difference is in European feudalism, feudal lords were considered to be owners of the land. In feudalism, Indian feudalism, feudal lords, or rather also known as samantas, clear, they were not considered to be owners of land. Peasants remained to be owners of land, but peasants had to pay certain amount of produce to the lands of samantas, and samantas used to appropriate maximum benefit. Clear? So there was some difference in Indian feudalism and European feudalism. In European feudalism, feudal lords were basically a feudal class of feudal lords, and they cultivated the land with the help of peasants, and certain large part of the produce was taken over by them. Out of that, certain produce was given to the monarchy also as tribute, and major part was kept by feudal lords. Clear? Feudalism is always marked by weak central authority. Why? A strong monarch will never allow any delegation of authority to intermediaries. But at least since all these were autocratic monarchs, never cared for people, they gave major powers to intermediaries, that is feudal lords, and lived a life of aristocracy and luxury. This is known as feudalism. So feudalism and feudal lords. Is the concept clear, Mr. Anand? Just revert me, then only I'll proceed further. Is the concept of feudalism clear? Difference is clear between Indian feudalism and European feudalism? Just revert me. Okay, fine. And there's another question. First of all, Anand, just answer me. Is that concept clear? Feudalism and feudal lords. Are you there, Anand? Then I'll take another question. Okay, he's not responding. Let us come to another question. This is asked by Subhashri. So while the world history was taking shape in, we can say in England, in England in a way, is there any parallel simultaneous development in our country? Sir, please give a light on the linkage if it is there. Again, I'll let you know. Clear? If you want to look into the parallel development in our country, yes, sir, thank you. Clear. So, fine. If you want to look into parallel developments in our country, you mean to say when world history was taking shape in England, clear, is there any parallel development? No, again, I'll let you know. Just coming to parallel development also, I'll let you know. Clear. First of all, we are discussing about Europe. We began to discuss from 13th century till 18th century. We will discuss that modernization started to take place from here, and modernization took concrete shape by 18th century. Clear? Coming to India. Clear? What was happening in India at that time? Parallel development, that is from 13th century to 18th century. Very prominent question. What was happening for this 5 years in Europe, for this 5 years in Europe? Here we are discussing that Here we are discussing that medieval system began to give to modern system. That is, absolute monarchy began to be questioned, feudalism began to be questioned, and at the same time, dominance of church and clergy class began to be questioned. Clear? At the same time, when we come to 13th and 18th century in Europe, clear? From 13th century to 18th century, it was complete medieval system in Europe, clear? Medieval system in India, clear? So, it was complete medieval system in India. Autocratic monarchy existed from 13th to 18th century. That is, first of all, it was Delhi Sultanate from 13th to 15th century. Then we had Mughal Empire till the beginning of 18th century. So autocratic monarchy existed here. At the same time, autocratic monarchy existed here. We need to understand there was one difference. Here it was feudal system that existed. Here there was no feudal system. Clear? Why no feudal system? Because all these monarchs were very powerful. They concentrated all powers in their own hand. So no feudalism existed in India from 13th to 18th century. Before 18th century it was feudalism, but with arrival of Delhi Sultans, medieval Europe feudalism came to an end. So no feudal structure. No feudal structure. This is one difference that needs to be understood. Here it was feudalism. In India, there was no feudalism. Clear? Coming to church and clergy class that dominated here, obviously here also, it was the Islamic law and the ulemas. Like the clergy in Europe, it was ulemas in India, Islamic theologians in India who played a very important and dominating role over Sultanate politics and society, and even under Mughals as well. Clear? So there were some similarities and differences. If you draw a parallel line, clear? From 13th to 18th century, the medieval system began to be questioned, modernization began to take place. Clear? Medieval system was marked by autocratic monarchy. Here also autocratic monarchy existed in India. Feudalism existed here. No feudalism existed here because obviously all these rulers, they confined all powers in their own hands. Clear? And domination of church and clergy class. Here also domination of the religious classes, that is ulemas. So some points of differences, some similarities as well. This is the parallel development. So Delhi Sultanate was there, Mughal Empire was there. Is that clear? Linkage is clear, light and linkage, and from here only when trade and commerce began to be promoted, Europeans or British began to come to India and they started imperial and colonial control over India. Is that fine? Subhashri, linkage is clear. Please revert back, then only I'll proceed further. Okay, fine, clear. I'll wait for your response. So this is clear linkage. Now moving to another, the topic we were discussing, clear. Coming to topic, we had discussed that capitalism is, we were discussing about the ideology of capitalism. So we need to understand about the ideology of capitalism here. What do you mean by the ideology of capitalism? Just understand, clear? According to the ideology of capitalism, the resources of a nation must be under the control of that section or class which has the wisdom for proper utilization to accelerate the process of economic growth, and in course of time, the benefit of economic growth will accrue to all the sections and automatically equality will be established. This is the ideology of capitalism, which was largely promoted by Adam Smith in his work Wealth of Nations, in which he advocated the concept of laissez-faire or free market economy. Clear? Write about this concept. Yes, sir, linkage is clear. Fine. Thank you. Clear? Right. First of all, capitalism. Right. According to the ideology of capitalism, according to the ideology of capitalism, the resource of a nation, must be controlled, must be controlled by that section, must be controlled by that section which has the knowledge or wisdom, which has the knowledge or wisdom for proper utilization, knowledge or wisdom for proper utilization to accelerate the rate of economic growth, to accelerate the rate of economic growth, accelerate the rate of economic growth, rate of economic growth, accelerate the rate of economic growth. Clear? Right. The ultimate aim of this ideology, the ultimate aim of this ideology is to promote equality, automatically and through democratic process, automatically and through democratic process, through democratic process, through democratic process. Okay, right? This ideology was promoted by an English thinker and philosopher, English thinker and philosopher Adam Smith, who wrote a monumental work, Adam Smith, who wrote a monumental work, The Wealth of Nations, in the 18th century, The Wealth of Nations in the 18th century, in which he advocated the principle of laissez-faire, principle of laissez-faire, whereby economy is to be based on the market principle, economy is to be based on the market principle of demand and supply, market principle of demand and supply, with least interference by the government, with least interference by the government. Clear? Right. Such philosophy led to the emergence of several enterprising traders, several enterprising traders and merchants. Several enterprising traders and merchants who even began to emphasize on overseas trade, not only internal trade, overseas trade. Okay, right. This resulted into establishment of economic and political control. Establishment of economic and political control over large parts of Asia and Africa, leading to imperialism and colonialism. Leading to imperialism and colonialism. Imperialism and colonialism. Change paragraph. Clear? Right. The capitalist class of England. The capitalist class of England realized, the capitalist class of England realized that they needed to promote large and heavy industries. They needed to promote large and heavy industries, especially in the textile sector, as England was highly dependent on textile products from Asia and Africa. Textile products from Asia and Africa. Textile products from Asia and Africa. Asia and Africa. Textile products from Asia and Africa. Africa. Clear? Right. Therefore, the capitalist class of Britain, began to emphasize on utilizing the native resources, as well as the resources brought from Asia and Africa. Asia and Africa. Clear? Right. The capitalist class introduced series of reforms in England. To promote industrial growth. Industrial growth. Clear? Now just understand sequentially how they began to promote industrialization and what were the major reforms in sequential order. Clear? You need to understand the things in sequential order. That is very much important for your mains examination. Clear? Now before we go on to discuss about reforms introduced by the capitalist class in order to promote industrialization largely related to textile sector, we'll come to those reforms. First of all, I'll take a question from your side. It has been asked by Vishwajit. Clear? Sir, is not medieval system in India, there are Iqtadar or Iqta system or Zamindari system in India. Is not Iqta system is like federal system in Europe? See, I'll let you know. First of all, clear? See, I hope ancient medieval has been done in this class, in your session. Clear? See, I'll let you know why I'm asking this, because obviously you need to know by this time, if medieval system has been done, that Iqta system was totally different from the federal system in Europe. Clear? You need to understand the Iqta system which was there in medieval India, that is within India in medieval time. What was that Iqta system? I'll let you know. Clear? And then you will understand how far it is different from the feudal system in Europe or even feudalism in India also. Clear? We'll understand the Iqta system. I'll let you know. Clear? You must be knowing that this Iqta system was introduced by the Sultan of Delhi Sultanate, Iltutmish, who is considered to be the real founder of Delhi Sultanate, not even Aibak also. Clear? Now, what was it? Iqta system. Clear? According to this Iqta system, clear, the whole area under the Sultan of Delhi or Delhi Sultanate, this whole area was divided into two sections. Clear? The larger section was known as the Iqta land. Clear? So the larger section was known as the Iqta land in Delhi Sultanate. This larger area was further subdivided into smaller pieces of agriculture land. Clear? So smaller division into agriculture land was done of Iqta system. Clear? All these smaller pieces of agriculture lands known as Iqta lands were given to leading military generals of Delhi Sultanate. Clear? And when these lands were allotted to leading military generals, these military generals were supposed to get the lands cultivated with the help of Iqtadars, and out of total agriculture produce generated, clear, 1/3 was to be collected by military generals or Iqtadars as land revenue of the state. Clear? Out of 1/3 revenue collected by Iqtadars, clear, Iqtadar was supposed to deduct his own salary as well as the expenses of horses and soldiers maintained by him, and the remaining amount was remitted back to Sultanate treasury, meaning thereby a scheme of financial centralization was maintained in the Delhi Sultanate from the beginning. And it must be remembered, clear, that Iqtadars or military generals acted as officers of the Sultan, and they could be transferred from one Iqta to another Iqta at any point of time, meaning thereby they didn't had hereditary rights, they didn't had permanent rights over these assignments. These were only transferable revenue assignment, meaning thereby Iqtadars under Delhi Sultanate acted merely as officers of the sultans who could be transferred from one Iqta to another Iqta anytime. But this was not the case with feudalism. In feudalism, permanent or hereditary rights were given over land to the feudal lords in Europe. Clear? So this is quite in contrast. That is why in feudalism, power was largely under feudal lords, but in Iqta system, power was largely under Delhi Sultan or the monarch. Complete monarchy, autocratic monarchy existed here. Clear? So there was complete difference between the Iqta system that existed in medieval India and the feudalism that exists in Europe. Feudalism ensured permanent rights over land by the feudal lords, but in Iqta system, the Iqtadars were merely officers who could be transferred from one Iqta to another Iqta at any point of time. Clear? Similarly, Zamindari system also same thing. Clear? Zamindari system existed, and Zamindars were owners of land, but at the same time, they also had to pay a tax to the state authority. They could not keep the revenue with them. Clear? And obviously, this Zamindari system existed in late medieval India, and especially it came into existence during British period only. Clear? Because British started to give revenue rights and permanent rights to intermediaries as feudalism existed in Europe. Clear? But that system never existed in ancient and medieval India, ownership rights over land always remained with the peasantry class. Here also, Iqtidars were mere collecting agents of revenue. Revenue rights or permanent rights over land was enjoyed by the peasantry class. This is the difference between Iqta system and the feudalism in Europe. Is this clear, Vishwajit? First of all, revert back. Is the difference clear between Iqta system and the feudal system in Europe? Iqta system is a bureaucratic system marked by centralization of power by monarch. Feudalism was not a centralized system, rather it marked delegation of authority to feudal lords. Clear? Okay, just a thank you. Clear? No, next question. Next question is from Nimai. Clear? Sir, if all the wealths are under the control of ruling class or the higher class, then how it will promote equality? See, it is believed that, Nimai, clear? It is believed that once the great rate of economic growth is accelerated, clear? Obviously, more and more production will be done, and since more and more production will be done, market for that produced article will also be created by giving purchasing power to common masses. Clear? So obviously, purchasing power will also come to the masses because they will be given regular wages for the production, and with this purchasing power they can purchase all the necessary commodities, and therefore that will lead to their own prosperity. In course of time, therefore it is said, the resources will percolate to the lower section and equality will be established. Clear? But your question is valid that in few countries such equality has not taken place, rather resources remained confined under the capitalist class only, and that resulted into several problems. The most important example being Great Economic Depression that took place in 1929 in all the capitalist countries because common masses were bereft of purchasing power capacity. But it is normally believed that it will lead to democratic equality with percolation of resources among all the section. Is it clear? Please revert back, Nimai. Is this doubt clear to you? Okay, next question is from Anand. Dear sir, bachpan wala doubt. No issue, they're clear. What are the major differences between colonialism and imperialism? Okay, fine, clear. Now coming to, this doubt remains among many students, and you need to be very clear in this concept. Clear? The utility of such classes is conceptual clarity needs to be emphasized. So first of all, Anand, clear? Bachpan wala doubt. It's not bachpan wala doubt. In fact, to be very candid, this doubt exists among UPSC aspirants also. Clear? And in fact, major experts also. Don't worry. So it's not nothing to be concealed. It's not bachpan wala doubt. It's basically a doubt that exists even now among experts also. So first of all, we'll understand what is the difference between colonialism and imperialism. Clear? So coming to difference between colonialism and imperialism. First of all, do understand about the term imperialism. Clear? And then we'll understand about the term colonialism as well. Colonialism. Now coming to imperialism, first of all, clear? Imperialism is a phenomena whereby, clear, one country exercises control over another country, and that too not direct control but a kind of proxy control. Clear? So imperialism always means that one country having proxy control over another country. Clear? For instance, clear, India first of all came under the control of a private company from England known as British East India Company. Later on, after the mighty revolt of 1857, India came under the imperial control of British Crown. Clear? Because British Crown began to rule over India by staying back in London, not by coming to India, and it means proxy control of one country over another country. So imperialism means proxy control or indirect control over one country by another country, primarily to extract resources, economic resources. Clear? So obviously proxy control primarily to utilize economic resources. So this is the logic of imperialism. So imperialism means only few sections of one country coming to another country, exercising control over the resources of that country, taking away the resources for the benefit of the home country, and obviously it is temporary in phenomena. So another difference is it is temporary in phenomena. Why? Proxy control cannot be exercised for longer period of time. Clear? Obviously, after a certain point of time, the proxy control will come to an end, and therefore the country can become independent as well. So it is always temporary in nature, not permanent in nature. This is completely exploitative in nature. Completely exploitative. Why? It leads to drain of resources from one country to another country, and that bereft the one country from major resources also. Like India began to witness several famines in course of time just because of exploitation done by proxy control or imperial control of Britain. This is the phenomenon of imperialism, and these are basically clear, and these are basically the features of imperialism. So proxy control, economic resources, temporary control, and completely exploitative in nature. Clear? Now coming to the concept of colonialism. Clear? Concept of colonialism is different from imperialism because it is not marked by proxy control, rather it is marked by direct control. Or what do you mean by direct control? Clear. Any country is considered to be a colony of another country when large section of that country comes to another country and they decide to stay there permanently. Clear. So it's not a proxy control. Colonialism means when large section of one country migrate permanently to another country to stay there permanently and to utilize the resources, that it is known as colonialism. Clear? So colonialism is a direct control over another country by the members of one country. So this is one difference. Clear? Again, it is not only for economic resources. Clear? Obviously, apart from economic consequences, it was political control. Political and economic control both. So it was political control also and economic control as well. So both political and economic control. So it is more pervasive in nature, that is colonialism. So imperialism means only economic resources, control over economic resources. Here it means political and economic control. Clear? And since large number of people has shifted from one country to another country, it is not for temporary purpose, rather it is for permanent character. So it is more permanent in nature rather than temporary in nature. And apart from being exploitative, it may be exploitative, it may not be exploitative, because in course of time the people can settle down permanently to utilize the resources. The most example being United States. North America was also colonized by England. Clear? Later on, English people began to stay there and they began to develop America. Clear? So obviously it can be exploitative, it cannot be exploitative as well. Clear? So may or may not be exploitative. May not be exploitative. Clear? May or may not be exploitative. Clear? These are major changes. Clear? So all these are difference between imperialism and colonialism. Difference is clear. It's not bachpan wala doubt. It's very important doubt. Clear? Yes, Anand, and it's for not only Anand, it's for everyone I know. The confusion persists, so make things clearly. All these points, you need to be conceptually very clear. Is the doubt clear, Anand? Please revert back. The utility of the class is you need to be conceptually very sound. Is the doubt clear, Anand? Please revert back. I'm not going to proceed until the doubts are clear. Okay, I'll wait for your answer. Clear? So it's fine, imperialism and colonialism. Now at the same time, clear, let us move to the development that we're discussing about in Britain. Apart from promoting capitalism, the capitalist class promoted series of reforms in England, and therefore England became the harbinger of industrialization. First of all, what were these major reforms in England? We'll understand those major reforms. Clear? First of all, clear, in order to promote industrial growth and development, the capitalist class proceeded very systematically, and first of all, they introduced the concept of agrarian reforms or agricultural reforms. Now, what was this agricultural reforms introduced by the capitalist class in Britain? Clear? We'll understand this. Clear? There's another question, Vishwajit. Sir, is Chinese colonialism over Thailand and Ladakh? Clear? Yeah, obviously, kind of colonialism, because large number of Chinese has directly shifted to the region of Ladakh. It's a kind of colonial control. Chinese colonialism cannot be denied. Clear? Now, coming back, clear, to this, clear. So, first of all, agrarian reforms were introduced by the capitalist class, and in agrarian reform, the capitalist class first of all promoted a movement which is known as the enclosure movement. Now, what was this enclosure movement which was promoted in Britain? Clear? We'll understand about enclosure movement. Clear? Sir, is Chinese colonialism over Theon and Tibetan? See, again, like colonialism basically means one people or class of people of one country shift to another country. Clear? If it is shifting permanent in nature, it will be colonialism. It is parked. Clear? Obviously, parking will not be a colonialism, because parking means after some time you have to take back also. Clear? So once you decided to take back, it becomes temporary in nature. It will be termed as imperialism, not colonialism. There's a concept of migration and immigration. You must be understanding. Immigrants are those people who shift to another region permanently. Clear? They are known as immigrants. Clear? So if they are immigrants, it will be termed as colonialism. If it is simply migration, it will be termed as imperialism. So obviously, if the people are being parked for temporary phase, parking itself means for temporary time, obviously it will not be colonialism, it will be termed as imperialism. Is that clear, Vishwajit? Please revert back, all of you. If you ask question, I just want to get it confirmed you have understood the concept. Your doubt had been cleared. So please revert back once I explain your doubt, once I clarify your doubt. Vishwajit, Anand is still waiting for your answer. Anand and Vishwajit. Okay, so without waiting, I'll just proceed, but I'll wait for your response. Clear? So coming back, clear? So enclosure movement. What was this enclosure movement? Clear? First of all, the capitalist class promoted the idea that all agricultural lands which were there in England, they had been fragmented, or they had been divided into smaller pieces. Clear? They first of all wanted those fragmented agricultural lands to be clubbed together into larger pieces of agricultural land, so that on those larger pieces of agricultural lands, agriculture could be pursued, or holistic agriculture policy could be adopted. Clear? So that to enhance agriculture production. So smaller pieces of agricultural lands were clubbed together, leading to land consolidation, and consolidated land holding were surrounded by large boundary wall or enclosed within the boundary wall, and this land consolidation came to be known as enclosure movement in England. Just because of enclosure movement in England, clear, as holistic agriculture policies could be adopted, and that led to surplus agriculture produced in course of time. When surplus agriculture produced began to be generated because of this agrarian reform, clear, large number of people working on agriculture could be diverted towards factory production, meaning thereby till this time all the people were directly or indirectly engaged in agriculture only. But by now, since surplus agriculture produced began to be generated to feed those people not working on agriculture, large number of people could be diverted to non-agricultural activities. Thereafter, large number of people relieved from agriculture activities, they began to be brought at one place, and at one place only they were provided with raw materials for production activities, and therefore large large number of people began to work as workers in these setups, and that resulted into factory system in England. So large factories began to be formed as large number of people could be diverted from agricultural activities. This resulted into factory system, and in course of time these factories got transformed into large industrial setups. Clear? So for behind this, the first major reform was enclosure movement by British capitalist class. Clear? We'll write about this enclosure movement. Clear? Now, just wait. Yes, sir. Thank you and love you, sir. Clear? Sir, East India Company is an example of proxy. Yeah, sure. Fine. And sir, can we say India became a victim of colonialism looking at ancient medieval history, and India is also a victim of imperialism looking at modern history? Fine. Perfectly fine. It's a perfect analysis. I'll repeat. It's a very nice line by Anand. Clear? Sir says, clear? Sir, East India Company is an example of proxy. No doubt, perfectly fine. And sir, can we say India became a victim of colonialism looking at ancient medieval history? Yeah, even though the term colonialism was not used in ancient medieval India, but phenomena was of colonialism only. And India is also a victim of imperialism looking at modern history and the British rule. Perfectly fine. Clear? So I think you are getting the concepts properly. Do we make the concepts very clear? It's fine, Anand. So let us move forward. Let us start with understand the enclosure movement. Right, first, clear? Right, the capitalist class of Britain, the capitalist class of Britain, the capitalist class of Britain started with agrarian reform, whereby smaller agricultural lands were clubbed together. Smaller agricultural lands were clubbed together as large consolidated unit, for proper agricultural approach. Proper agricultural approach. Clear? Right. The large land holdings were enclosed with boundary wall, enclosed with boundaries, and such initiative is known as the enclosure movement. Holdings been enclosed. Enclosure movement. Right, next. Right, such reforms resulted into surplus production of food grains. And large number of people were diverted towards towards non-agricultural activities, diverted towards non-agricultural activities, non-agricultural activities. Clear? Right, such phenomena facilitated the capitalist class. Such phenomena facilitated the capitalist class, facilitated the capitalist class to assemble workers at one place, to assemble workers at one place, to start production activities, to start production activities. Clear? Right. This resulted into the factory system. This resulted into a factory system, which gave way for the establishment of large industries, large industries. Clear? So first is agrarian reforms. Clear? Right, next paragraph. Clear? Right, the capitalist class is sponsored. The capitalist class is sponsored series of scientific inventions, in the textile sector, which promoted rapid industrialization, So we'll discuss about series of scientific inventions and discoveries. Clear? Now, before we discuss scientific invention and discovery, there's a question from Abhishek. Clear? So India at first was a part of British imperialist policy. Yeah, policy was British imperialist policy. Later became a British colony. Yeah, true. Clear? Initially it was a part of British imperialist policy. Initially they were meant to be under imperial control, proxy control. Later on became a part of British colony. Obviously because large number of British came to India, and many after India's independence, many of them stayed back in India. Clear? And therefore resulted even into a community known as Anglo-Indian community. Clear? So all these are correlated factors. You need to understand how come we have Anglo-Indian community. Large number of British and Europeans decided to settle down, married the other ladies, and therefore the offspring came to be known as Anglo-Indians. Clear? Now next is Kolkata. Suvashis. Sir, hi sir, how boundaries increase the grain production? Yeah. Clear? There's a question by Suvashis. Sir, how boundaries increase the grain production? True. There is no doubt about it. Clear? So first of all, we'll understand this phenomena that how boundaries increase the grain production. See, just understand Suvashis. Clear? Suppose for instance, this is the large area. Clear? Within this area, there is division of agricultural lands into smaller pieces of agricultural lands. smaller pieces. Clear? Large number of units are there, smaller pieces are there distributed all across. Are you getting my point? Clear? Now, for instance, suppose understand. Clear? If we want to promote rapid or huge agriculture production, clear, if we select only this region, suppose for instance small region, clear, in this small region, first of all I'll let you know, clear, all the workers has to be employed in this region only, tractors has to be employed in this region only, all major efforts has to be given this region only. Suppose for instance 4 workers are engaged to work in this field, clear, at the same time if this boundary is eliminated, maybe the same 4 workers can work in the larger area, clear, the tractors employed can rotate in the larger area, clear, the seeds which were distributed on the small area can be spread out to larger area, and that will have aerial ventilation for this, for the seeds to germinate, meaning thereby, clear, for instance if the water is provided for irrigation, it will be stopped in this region, the water will go waste because obviously it is unnecessary accumulation. If it is larger, the water will spread to larger area. So obviously when the smaller barriers are eliminated, larger areas created, better irrigation could be pursued, workers maximum utilization could be ensured. Here the 4 workers can do the same work, here the 4 workers can work on the larger field also, clear. So obviously 8 workers working in the say 2 fields can be relieved and 4 workers can be employed in factory setup, clear. So increasing the areas results into large agricultural land where holistic agriculture policies could be adopted, and that will obviously enhance the production also with reduced manpower, and that is why it is said enclosure movement led to surplus agriculture produced. So Subhashis, is that clear how boundaries increase the grain production? That is why in India also, why do we believe in land reforms? Because we wanted land consolidation, fragmentation of land to come to an end and larger land holdings to be created. Clear, Subhashis? No, revert back. Clear? So coming to scientific inventions. Clear? Series of scientific inventions were promoted by the capitalist class with support of the scientific personalities in textile sector. And as the saying goes, clear, necessity is the mother of all invention. Clear. So obviously necessity proved or rather motivated the people to go for inventions and discoveries in the textile sector. First of all, clear, what exactly do we need in textile sector? The first thing that is required is the raw material, and the raw material that is used in textile sector is the raw cotton, clear. So therefore first major scientific progress was made to procure raw cotton, clear. Till this time, large number of raw cotton was separated from cotton seeds manually, clear. So obviously all these things were done manually, clear, and manual process was time consuming in nature, and that too it resulted into less production of raw cotton, clear. So obviously raw cotton needed to be separated from cotton seeds. In order to separate raw cotton from cotton seeds mechanically, not with human effort, clear, there was a scientific personality named as Eli Whitney. Whitney. Eli Whitney, who invented a device known as cotton gin. Clear? The purpose of cotton gin was to separate raw cotton from cotton seeds mechanically at a faster pace. So with mechanical device, large amount of raw cotton could be separated from cotton seeds. Next major challenge was to convert this raw cotton into fine threads, because these threads only could be converted into textile clothes, clear. In order to convert raw cotton into cotton threads, clear, another scientific personality named as Hargreaves. He invented a spinning machine. Through this spinning machine, raw cotton could be converted into finer threads. But initially, this spinning machine was operated manually. Obviously, it could not lead to larger conversion of raw cotton to cotton threads. After some time, there was another scientific personality named as Richard Arkwright. And this person, Richard Arkwright, he invented a device which is known as water frame. The purpose of water frame was that through the kinetic energy of water, through the energy of flowing water, with this kinetic energy of water, the spinning machine could be operated. Meaning thereby, no spinning machine was not to be operated by hand manually, but to be operated by the energy of flowing water or kinetic energy of water through water frame. So the spinning machine could be operated mechanically. The inventions of Hargreaves and Arkwright were combined together by another scientific personality known as Crompton, and Crompton finally improvised these two inventions and created modern spinning machine. So modern spinning machine was invented by Crompton, and Crompton began to operate the machine mechanically. So large number of fine threads could be produced with mechanical operation of a spinning machine. This was another set of scientific invention discovery. At the same time, apart from this, another scientific invention was, in fact, the most important one was that after these two inventions, there was a person named as James Watt. And James Watt invented a steam engine. James Watt invented a steam engine. And initially, this steam engine was used to procure coal and iron from beneath the ground. But later on, this steam engine was improvised by another scientific personality named as George Stephenson. And he began to promote steam engine for locomotive purposes, that is for transportation purposes. Clear? So steam engine began to be used for locomotive purposes by George Stephenson, whereby raw material areas began to be connected with the factory setup or industrial setup. Clear? In the transportation sector, there was another person named as McAdam, and he invented roads or permanent roads, and therefore these roads even now in England are known as macadamized roads. Clear? All these set of scientific inventions and discoveries promoted rapid growth and development of industries in Britain, and that resulted into industrialization known as Industrial Revolution in England. So all these factors combined together became the major factors for beginning of industrialization in England for the first time. Clear? Write about this series of scientific inventions and discoveries. Clear? It's clear? Right. The first important scientific invention, the first important scientific invention was done by Eli Whitney, in form of cotton gin. Eli Whitney in form of cotton gin to separate raw cotton from the cotton seeds, mechanically. And at faster pace. PAC, and at faster pace. Clear? Pace, right. The second major invention was of a spinning machine by Hargreaves. A spinning machine by Hargreaves. spinning machine by Hargreaves. By Hargreaves. A spinning machine by Hargreaves. Hargreaves, clear? Right. In order to operate this machine mechanically, in order to operate this machine mechanically, Richard Arkwright, Richard Arkwright invented a device known as water frame. 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 Known as water frame. Water frame. Clear? Right. The inventions of Hargreaves and Arkwright. The inventions of Hargreaves and Arkwright were combined together. Arkwright were combined together by Crompton. Combined together by Crompton. By Crompton. To invent a modern spinning machine. 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 Change paragraph. Right. The most revolutionary invention, the most important revolutionary invention was done by James Watt. Done by James Watt. Done by James Watt. Done by James Watt in form of steam engine. In form of steam engine. In form of steam engine. Form of steam engine. Steam engine which was originally used. Which was originally used. Which was originally used. Used to procure, P-R-O-C-R-U, originally used to procure coal and iron. Coal and iron for industries. Coal and iron for industries. Clear? Right. In course of time, steam engine was improvised. Steam engine was improvised. Steam engine was improvised. Steam engine was improvised. Was improvised by George Stephenson. By George Stephenson for locomotive purposes. for locomotive purposes. For locomotive purposes. Clear? Locomotive purposes to connect factories with sources of raw materials. With sources of raw materials. Clear? Right. Next, in the field of transportation, Pakka roads or permanent roads. Pakka roads or permanent roads were invented by McAdam. Were invented by McAdam, which further promoted connectivity. Clear? Connectivity. So all these factors combined together led to replacement of muscle power of human beings with mechanical power of machines, and therefore it resulted into rapid industrialization in England. Clear? So ultimately, if you get a question, why industrial revolution first of all broke out in England, start with political reforms, that is Magna Carta and Glorious Revolution, then go with economic reforms like enclosure movement, then go with then at the same time beginning of capitalist ideology, then at the same time series of scientific inventions and discoveries. All these factors combined together led to rapid industrialization in England. Clear? So England became the first country to witness industrial revolution. Now next question is that if this industrialization took place in England, what were its consequences? Why? Clear? Because any event in history is termed as revolution if that event had long-term consequences which could not be reversed till contemporary times. So all the events in histories are not termed as revolution. We use the term revolution for only those historical developments which led to long-term structural changes in course of time, and that could not be reversed till contemporary times. Clear? So obviously industrial revolution led to long-term consequences in course of time which could not be reversed till contemporary times, and just because of such developments they are termed as revolution. So you need to be conceptually very clear what exactly do we mean by revolution. So whenever we discuss about revolution, next important development is to understand the consequences. Clear? In history, any event is judged on the basis of its consequences. Clear? So we know, or we give relative importance to certain events in history depending on its consequences. Those events which had long-term consequences which could not be reversed till contemporary times, those events of history are known as revolution. Clear? So obviously this industrial growth that took place in England could not be reversed because many countries are going industrialization now, and therefore it is termed as revolution or revolutionary development. Clear? Right? One sentence here. Clear? So all these developments all these developments replaced the muscle power of human beings with the mechanical power of machines, resulting into long-term changes being felt till contemporary times, to be termed as Industrial Revolution. To be termed as Industrial Revolution. Termed as Industrial Revolution. So factors, concept is clear about revolution. So obviously now we'll move on to discuss the consequences of industrialization in England or industrial revolution in England. Clear? First of all, we'll discuss about major consequences within England. Then we'll discuss consequences of English industrial revolution to other parts of the world as well. Clear? So now we'll move on to discuss about consequences of industrial revolution in England. Clear? So let us move to another topic, and the topic is consequences of industrial revolution in England. Consequences of industrial revolution. Clear? So now we'll move on to discuss about consequences of industrial revolution. Clear? First of all, we'll discuss about consequences within England, then we'll discuss consequences outside England, and we'll discuss how industrial revolution acted as template for all other changes in contemporary times. Even the two world wars also largely related to industrial revolution in England. Till this point, is everything clear to all of you, or do you have any query? I'm here to answer. Do you have any query, any question that comes to your mind? Please let me know. Before we proceed with consequences of industrial revolution, any question that comes to your mind, be very free with me. Ask the question. Was everything clear to all of you till the point we had discussed? Please revert back. Is everything clear to all of you till the point? No doubt, sir. Thank you. Clear? So, now as far as the schedule is there, clear, sir. Thank you. The schedule is there. We'll have a break for 1 hour as of now, 21 to 2. Crystal clear, sir. Thank you. Thank you so much, all of you. Clear? So, as the schedule is there, as I have been informed, you have a session from 11 to 1. Then we have a break for 1 hour, that is 1 to 2. And we start again at 2 o'clock. So, we'll start again at 2 o'clock. We'll start again at 2 o'clock and continue for another 2-hour session, that is 2 to 4. Is that clear? So we'll have a break for 1 hour, that is from 1 to 2 p.m. Clear? It's exactly 1 o'clock. We'll take a break for 1 hour, have lunch and all, be free, and then we'll start again exactly sharply at 2 o'clock. Clear? Thank you. All the best.